Welcome to this week's broadcast with Dr. Nugent. If you have any questions regarding this program, please send an email to ccqa@manatech.com. Let's hear from Manatech's Global Wellness Director, Dr. Steve Nugent.
Hello, my friends. This is Dr. Steve Nugent, welcoming you to broadcast number 9 in the series for 2015. And this is part of our continuing series on fitness products. And the reason for this is that we've been asked, pretty frequently recently. Over the last 2 months, we've had a lot of requests to talk about products that can support fitness or that can in some way support athletes in their quest to be champions. Of course, our first in the series on fitness was about CardioBalance, because in my opinion, this is the most important product if you are an athlete, if you choose to be active, or if you don't choose to be active, it's still pretty darn important. I like to say to people, if you have a heart, you should probably take CardioBalance, and that keeps it real simple for everybody. Well, today we're going to talk about sport. There are certain types of support that you should have every day, and then there are some products that you need to have active in sufficient levels in your bloodstream every day when you actually begin the activity and when you recover from the activity. And so that's why I have the daily support products that we mentioned in number 1 in this fitness series. So today we're going to talk about sport, as I mentioned, and of course, keep in mind that people are listening to this worldwide, so in some places it's day, in some places it's night, as I am coming to you at this moment. So I probably should avoid saying day and night, but anyway, that's the way it works. So sport is about the recovery process, primarily is the way it's sold, but here's another one of those products where really, it's a product that should be taken during, and you can make a case for prior to the workout. And why is this? This is because of the primary function of sport. And there's an awful lot of confusion among the people who buy sport and also buy a product called Plus, where they glance at the label and they assume that the two products are identical or that they're interchangeable. Well, folks, they're not. And I'll cover that in a few minutes. So we talk about sport for the recovery process in our marketing, but what's really important if you're an athlete or if you're just being more active every day, or perhaps you've decided that it's time to become active. And I'll tell you what, for about, around 65% of Americans, it's past time to become active. And of course, that number varies in every country, naturally. But in the United States, according to U.S. government survey, it says that fewer than 35% of American citizens have any activity outside of their daily work activity at all. Oof, boy, that's a dismal record. So, and you know what? Throughout the Western world, it's getting to be that way. Even in countries where the majority of people used to be very active, as an example, Australia, there are fewer and fewer people now who are being active and more who are going towards the sort of sit in my chair at the computer lifestyle. And of course, many Australians don't want to accept that yet, but that trend is happening worldwide, unfortunately. So activity is important. All right, now, the purpose of sport has been misunderstood so often. And let's try and get this clear for everybody, because it's not part of our marketing materials at Manatech. So it really hasn't been taught to any extent. And even people who are doing the very best they can with all the zeal they have handy to tell people about Manatech products, well, they probably don't know this either. All right, there's something called lactic acid. Now, lactic acid, when it builds up in your muscles, it causes your muscles to hurt. In fact, it can get to the point where it's extremely painful as the lactic acid builds up. Many people think that somehow there's some magic in sport that causes a reduction in lactic acid, and that's not the way it works. Here's the way it works, and I always hesitate about getting too complicated on these things because I want to make sure everyone understands. So hopefully the way I'm going to say this will make sense to everyone, regardless of your level of education in the sciences. When the body requires production of energy faster than the body can adequately deliver oxygen, then energy comes from glucose through a process which is called glycolysis, in which glucose is broken down or metabolized, if you will, into a substance called pyruvate through a series of, somewhat complicated steps. When the body has plenty of oxygen, pyruvate is then delivered to an aerobic pathway, so air, all right? So it's delivered to an aerobic pathway to be further broken down for more energy. But when oxygen is limited, so you're not getting enough oxygen into the muscles, and this often happens when you're doing very strenuous exercise, and this can be strenuous exercise just lifting weights. It doesn't have to be running, okay? You don't have to be doing a marathon necessarily. So then what happens in this process then is that it temporarily converts the pyruvate into something called lactate. And no, that has nothing to do with milk, okay? So the lactate then, this allows the glucose to break down and then energy production can continue. Well, the byproduct here then is the buildup of lactic acid. So the key is to keep this from happening, not to grab the lactic acid and try and reduce it magically. That's not the way it's done. What you want to do is you want to help those pathways, those functions that I just explained, to keep those functions, from functioning. So, the best way to do this is to support normal, healthy levels of blood sugar. So what sport is designed to do, really, is to help us have normal, healthy levels of blood sugar so that we are reducing this process that results in lactic acid. Now, the other half of that, or the other portion of that, is going to be oxygen delivery. There are things that you can do to increase what's known as VO2 max, or the maximization of oxygen delivery and utilization. But one of the reasons that I recommend CardioBalance so much to athletes and to active people is because if you improve circulation, you will by default be delivering what's ever in the blood more effectively. So because CardioBalance has agents in it that are historically associated with improved circulation and vasodilation, that is, enlarging of your network that carries the blood, then that's why I recommend CardioBalance for all the athletes and for all people who are being active. Hopefully now, Fitness 1 in this series will make more sense as I'm explaining sport. Well, now you say, that doesn't sound like a recovery product then. That sounds more like a product to help us during the workout or during the activity. And you're right. So once again, with Manitech products, we are not limited to this one only does recovery, this one only does during the workout, and this one is only for pre-workout. There's so much overlap in the benefits, folks, of these products for athletes, for active people, virtually for anyone, that really makes our fitness products, really makes them more effective, in my opinion, for the active person. All right, so I'm going to go over our ingredients, as is the custom on these broadcasts, and then I'll explain to you what each of these ingredients are about and how they fit into this process. Now, there's a lot more to sport than what I've just talked about, but that is crucially important, particularly if you're an athlete or you're very active. Now, I'm going to take these out of alphabetical order. I normally do them in alphabetical order, but the one that makes most sense to follow what I just explained is chromium. Chromium is an essential trace mineral. Now, when you see the word essential in nutrition, it means your body must have it, and your body cannot make it by itself. In other words, an essential nutrient has to be taken from an outside source. Now, that's a food or a food supplement. So with this in mind, this is an essential trace element. Now, it is obviously historically associated with blood sugar support, with healthy levels of blood sugar. That's what it's normally sold for. That's what it's normally advertised for. You can find chromium naturally occurring, by the way, in things like bran cereals. Chromium occurs in meat, in poultry, in fish. Yes, there are some beers that have chromium, but that's not a recommendation to drink beer as a dietary supplement. Okay, so don't go overboard with that. And also in red wines, you will find chromium. There's only going to be very small amounts in these dietary foods. This is why it's called a trace element, because it's a very, very small amount. So a trace mineral is something that is necessary in micrograms, and a macro mineral is something that's necessary in milligrams, so that you have another definition that you learned today. There have been no adverse effects researched with chromium from dietary intake or dietary supplements at this point, and I don't suspect that there ever will be. Now, one of the best researched types of chromium is chromium in the form of picolinate. So you'll see that in a lot of products. That can't be patented, but you'll see it in a lot of products. You will find it certainly in sport. Now, the chromium in Catalyst is not a picolinate, but rather it is a glycinate. I personally am very fond of glycinates, and I made that product Catalyst some years ago. All right, so boron is the next one on the list. Boron is, again, a trace mineral. It is naturally occurring. You find it in a lot of different foods, and mostly in vegetable-related stuff. You'll find it in peanut butter. You'll find it in wine, and in raisins and nuts and so on. But because it's mostly in vegetable materials, you'll find that vegetarians tend to get a little more boron than do people who consume an omnivorous diet. So you're looking at, in normal consumption, the average male gets about, on average, just a little over 1 milligram a day, and the average female just a little less than 1 milligram a day in the normal omnivorous diet. Now, you can have up to 18 milligrams a day of boron, and that appears to be very safe in adults, so not an issue, but you're rarely going to see a supplement that provides 18 milligrams of boron anyway. So, boron in the form of citrate is an organic compound, okay? So we're not talking about a synthetic here. This is an organic compound which contains boron, of course, and citric acid, hence the name boron citrate. Now, there's something in this in sport which is, well, kind of controversial, and you personally will decide if you're okay with it or not. Now, I'm really okay with it because I know that there are no harmful effects from it, and I used this particular ingredient in my practice years before Mannatech was even born. It's a very old substance. In fact, it goes back in the first medical textbook ever written. That was written back in 74 AD. And that's a book called the Materia Medica, which in Latin simply means medical material. And the Materia Medica, which is written by a physician who worked for the Roman army back in those days, and his name was Pedanius Dioscorides. And many believe that Dioscoria is named after him. Perhaps it is. I'm not certain of that. But the point is, he was kind of the first medical scientist, and he wanted to try things that he observed in nature and see if they had changes in human beings when he made a powder out of it or a liquid or whatever. Now, hold on to your seats, folks, because some of you may not be happy when you hear this. Some of you will be surprised, but there's no harmful effects from this. It's just a question of your philosophy, I guess. Today it's called orchic substance. That sounds like maybe it comes from a flower or something, right? Well, actually not. It's an extract from bovine testes. Now, I want you to get a grip for a second. This product has been tested It does not raise testosterone. It does not raise testosterone in men or women. All right, so don't do that absolutist train of thought like, oh my God, look what it comes from. Surely this will make a woman grow a mustache and all that sort of thing. No, it doesn't do that. This is an extract. If, as an example, I extract sulforaphane, which is an important phytochemical, from broccoli, you will be consuming sulforaphane. You will not be consuming broccoli. Hopefully you understand the difference. Why did Pedernus want to use this substance? Well, his observation was that bulls had unusual stamina and that they were much stronger than cows, much more energetic, much more powerful than cows, and he wanted to find something which could make Roman soldiers stronger and give them more stamina, make them work harder, fight harder, and so on. And he made a powder of this sort of thing, and his results were that Roman soldiers did in fact have more stamina, more strength, more power, but we've tested this, understand this has been tested, and there has been no raise in testosterone. So however it's working is something that's not yet understood. We simply know it's safe. Okay? Enough of that, because this product has enough controversy around it. And by the way, Sport was one of our earliest products at Manitech, and it has been a great product. People just love this product who use it. And again, it has been extensively tested. It is absolutely safe. Well, another one of the ingredients in Sport is sarsaparilla. Now, you've probably heard of that. You watch cowboy movies and so on, and somebody bellies up to the bar and says, "Give me a sarsaparilla." Well, sarsaparilla is used for food flavorings. It's used to flavor root beer, as an example, and other foods. It's an old traditional Chinese medical application, if you will, and it's not a medicine, but in ancient Chinese healing practices, they use the word medicine in discussion of various herbs and roots and so on. This is not a medicine, so don't think of it that way. Sarsaparilla is simply a source of what are called saponins and phytosterols. This product is primarily a phytosterol product, so we have used several different natural sources that are known to be safe for plant sterols. Now, of course, here's the point of confusion that people have between Sport and Plus. They look on the label and they see that Sport and Plus both contain what is referred to on our labels as wild yam extract, sometimes called Mexican wild yam. Well, the stuff that you eat on American Thanksgiving, as an example, those big orange potatoes that you call yams, they're not yams, okay? So this is not that. So wild yam falls under the scientific heading of Dioscorea. Named after Dioscorides? I'm not sure, but that's what people say. So, the Dioscorea then has certain properties which have been studied to the extent where we know that Dioscorea does support healthy glandular systems. It is not a hormone. It is not a hormone replacement. So don't get confused by that. But you do find the wild yam extract, or the extract from the Mexican wild yam, which, by the way, grows in Mexico and in southern Florida. And this particular yam can also be found in Central America and various areas of the tropics and in the Caribbean, and also in Africa, where, in fact, people consume this as a food. Scientists believe that our ancient ancestors who ate the human ancestral diet that we simply don't eat anymore, and this is one of the examples in the so-called modern world, where this isn't something that people consume anymore. If you saw the thing, you would not think about eating it. It's not an attractive plant. And if you tried to taste it, you'd go, oh my God, this is awful. And so you probably wouldn't think about eating it either. But traditional cultures who still eat traditional diets, they know the value, and this happens, it's one of these things where the chieftain or the shaman of a tribe hands this information down, who hands the information down, who hands the information down, century after century. So they know you're supposed to eat it because it's important for your health. Now, they may say that the gods ordered you to eat it or whatever they say, who cares? The point is, it actually is very good for your health, and it's not found in the modern diet, in the Western diet. Now, this particular extract, of course, is in Plus and Sport, but these products are not interchangeable. Because if you take the yam and you look at it, the Mexican wild yam, and if you take that and you combine it with the ingredients in Sport, you have one set of activities. If you combine it with the ingredients in Plus, you have a different set of activities. Is there a little bit of overlap? Of course. But it has to do with what is combined in it. To summarize, Sport is primarily marketed as a recovery agent. But really, because what you're looking at, what athletes love about sport, is that they continuously tell us that it helps them to reduce lactic acid production during their event, during their activity. And this is hugely important to keeping that activity going because lactic acid buildup causes pain in the muscles. So that's what it is doing. That's what the athletes are reporting it's doing, but it also helps with recovery. The soreness in the muscles, it helps you recover faster as well. It does support normal, healthy levels of blood sugar, without question. And that's how it helps to not reduce the lactic acid, but help to prevent that process. So you can find that if you're an athlete, if you're more active, or even if you're a couch potato and you want to help a little bit as you're being a little more active than you typically are, well, Sport is a really good product for you. For today's broadcast, we're bringing this to an end, and I want to say to you, this is Dr. Steve Nugent, wishing you a very happy, healthy, and prosperous week.
Thank you, Dr. Nugent. All of Dr. Nugent's broadcasts are available at manatechlive.com under the Hear from the Doctors tab and listed by broadcast number and date with search capabilities by subject. As a reminder to our listeners, if you have any questions regarding this program, please send an email to ccqa@manatech.com.